Howdy. It's another nice night. That I think is accurate. It's a little bit dark. It's a little bit later. Man, what a great day. I cut off on the last part of this because my camera died. So I wanted to keep reading on because it was requested. So we're going to be doing that. I hope you can hear me. Let's get going. Okay. We're still in chapter 1. Very close to chapter 2. But we're going to get there. Don't worry about that. Oh, I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm so ready. I'm very ready. You ready? Are you ready? 'Cause I'm ready. Very ready to go. I'm just gonna stand here for a couple seconds. You ready? Okay. Nice to hear that. Okay. Chapter 1 Loomings. Gotta find my spot. Ah, I know where we stopped. I'm gonna go back a sentence because it kind of stopped mid-sentence. Just as a recap, he's explaining why he goes to sea, and he was saying like, I just like to go because there's water, and whenever I'm feeling like not very good, I go out and I go to sea, and not as a passenger because being a passenger is expensive and you don't really enjoy yourself, and not as anything else because that's just not his style. And so he finally decides to go on a whaling voyage. This is all in first person. Ishmael is talking, so that's one thing. Okay, let's get going. He thinks he breathes it first, but not so. In much the same way do the commonality lead their leaders in many other things at the same time that the leaders little suspect it. But wherefore it was that after having repeatedly smelt the sea as a merchant sailor, I should now take it into my head to go on a whaling voyage. This is the invisible police officer of the fates, who has constant surveillance of me and secretly dogs me and influences me in some unaccountable way. He can better answer than anyone else. And doubtless my going on this whaling voyage formed part of the grand program of Providence that was drawn up a long time ago, and it came in as a sort of brief interlude and solo between more extensive performances. I take it that this part of the bill must have run something like this: grand contested election for the presidency of the United States, whaling voyage by one Ishmael, bloody battle in Afghanistan. There's like a, I don't know, it's like a title of something for a thing. Though I cannot tell why it was exactly that those stage managers, the fates, put me down for this shabby part of a whaling voyage. when others were set down for magnificent parts in high tragedies, and short and easy parts in genteel comedies, and jolly parts in farces. Though I cannot tell why this was exactly, yet now that I recall all the circumstances, I think I can see a little into the springs and motives, which being cunningly presented to me under various disguises, induced me to set about performing the part I did, besides cajoling me into the delusion that it was a choice resulting from my own unbiased free will and discriminating judgment. Chief among these motives was the overwhelming idea of the great whale himself. Such a portentous and mysterious monster roused all my curiosity. Then the wild and distant seas where he rolled his island bulk, the indeliverable, nameless perils of the whale, these with all the attending marvels of 1,000 Patagonian sights and sounds helped to sway me to my wish. With other men, perhaps, such things would not have been inducements. But as for me, I am tormented with an everlasting itch for things remote. I love to sail forbidden seas and land on barbarous coasts. Not ignoring what is good, I am quick to perceive a horror, and could still be social with it, would they let me, since it is but well to be on a friendly terms with all the inmates of the place one lodges in. By reason of these things, then, the whaling voyage was welcome. The great floodgates of the wonder world sprung open, and the wild conceits that swayed me to my purpose, there floated into my inmost soul endless processions of the whale, amid most of them all, one grand hooded phantom, like a snow hill in the air. So he's saying that it was destiny that brought him to do this thing, and that's basically what he's saying there, if you couldn't understand that. Chapter 2, we're finally there. It's called The Carpet Bag. That sounds really interesting. Do you liking this book so far? It's such a good book. I don't know how much of this we're gonna read. I'm only gonna make another video if someone again says, hey, you should make another one of these. These are so terrible. I don't know why you watch them. Okay, The Carpet Bag. By the way, I'd like to thank all of you guys for watching this video, because you could be doing anything else right now. This is probably going to be another like 20 to 30 minutes long, and it could be over that. And the fact that you're watching this video shows that you really enjoy classical literature. So, thank you for that. I'm going to keep reading, because I've got to. You've got to keep watching, because you don't have to, but you have to. We're just going to keep going. I don't know what I'm doing. I hope you know that. I stuffed a shirt or two into my old carpet bag, because he's traveling. Tucked it under my arm and started for Cape Horn in the Pacific, quitting the good city of Old Manhattan. So he's now leaving Manhattan. He was there originally. I duly arrived in New Bedford. So now he's in New Bedford. I forget where New Bedford is, but I'm pretty sure New Bedford. I'm pretty sure it's also New York. I could be wrong. Quitting the good city of Old Manhattan, I duly arrived in New Bedford. It was on a Saturday night in December. Much was I disappointed upon learning that the little packet for Nantucket had already sailed, and that no way of reaching that place would offer till the following Monday. Oh man, he's stranded there in New Bedford. What a poor soul. As most young candidates for the pains and penalties of whaling stop at this time, at this same New Bedford, thence to embark on their voyage, it may as well be related that I, for one, had no idea of so doing. For my mind was made up to sail in no other than a Nantucket craft. Because there was a fine, boisterous something about everything connected with that famous old island, which amazingly pleased me. Besides, though New Bedford has of late been gradually monopolizing the business of whaling, and though in this matter poor old Nantucket is now much behind her, yet Nantucket was her great original, the tire of this Carthage, the place where the first dead American whale was stranded. Where else but from Nantucket did those aboriginal whalemen, the red men, first sally out in canoes? Sally means to just go slowly. So like they sallied, these men, these aboriginal men just sallied out in these canoes. They went out slowly. I had to look that one up when I read this because I had no idea what Sally meant. If you know someone named Sally, or if you are Sally, did you know that Sally meant to go out slowly or something like that? Well, now you do. Interesting facts. And what did they do? They first sallied out in canoes to give chase to the Leviathan. And where else but from Nantucket did those aboriginal whalemen, the red men, first sally out in canoes to give chase to the Leviathan? And where but from Nantucket too did that first adventurous little sloop put forth, partly laden with imported cobblestones? So goes the story to discover when they were nigh enough to risk a harpoon from the bowsprit. The bowsprit. Now having a night, a day, and so another night following before me in New Bedford, ere I could embark for my destined port, it became a matter of concernment where I was to eat and sleep meanwhile, because he was going to be there for 3 days. It was a very dubious... Wait, that's not... Is that right? It was Saturday, and you had to get there on Monday. So whatever that means, that's how long you had to stay. And he was hungry too. He's got to find a place to eat. I know I would. Middle of winter, you can't just be in the streets in New Bedford and in the middle of winter and not have a... Okay, I'm gonna keep going. It was a very dubious looking, nay, a very dark and dismal night. Bitterly cold and cheerless. I knew no one in the place. With anxious grapnels. Grapnels are, have you seen, like, you know, like in Batman, where, like, they have the grappling hook? It's like the hook at the end of it. A grapnel. It's like a mini anchor, but he's describing his hands as a grapnel going into his pocket for money. With anxious grapnels, I had sounded my pocket and only brought up a few pieces of silver. So, wherever you go, Ishmael, said I to myself as I stood in the middle of a dreary street shouldering my bag and comparing the gloom towards the north with the darkness towards the south, wherever in your wisdom you may conclude to lodge for the night, my dear Ishmael, be sure to inquire the price, and don't be too particular. With halting steps I paced the streets and passed the sign of the Crossed Harpoons, but it looked too expensive and jolly there. Further on, from the bright red windows of Swordfish Inn, there came such fervor. I ran out of space, and so I lost my place. Let's try to go back. You probably can't see me at all. Is that humorous? That the video quality is so bad even though I have a semi-expensive camera? Let's continue on, shall we? Okay. I only have like less than 30 minutes left, so it can't be much longer than that. Okay. Okay. Too expensive and jolly, again thought I, pausing one moment to watch the broad glare in the street and hear the sounds of the twinkling glasses within. But go on, Ishmael. At last, said I at last. Don't you hear? Get away from before the door, your patched boots are stopping the way. So on I went. I now by instinct followed the streets that took me waterward, for there doubtless were the cheapest, if not the cheeriest inns. Such dreary streets, blocks of blackness, not houses on either hand, and here or there a candle, like a candle moving about in a tomb. At this hour of the night, at least on the last day of the week, that quarter of the town proved all but deserted. But presently I came to a smoky light proceeding from a low, wide building, the door of which stood invitingly open. It had a careless look, as if it meant for the uses of the public. So entering, the first thing I did was to stumble over an ash box in the porch. Ha! Thought I. Ha! As the flying particles almost choked me. Are there ashes from that destroyed city Gomorrah? But the crossed harpoons in the swordfish, this then must needs be the sign of the trap. However, I picked myself up and hearing a loud voice within, pushed on and opened a second interior door. It seemed the great black parliament sitting in Tophet. I don't know what that sentence means. It's a reference to something, I don't know. 100 black faces turned around in their rows to peer. Beyond, a black angel of doom was beating a book in a pulpit. It was a Negro church. Maybe I should have read on before I actually said that word. Oh no! And the preacher's text was about the blackness of darkness, and the weeping and wailing and teeth gnashing there. So hell. Ha, Ishmael, muttered I, backing out wretched entertainment at the sign the trap. Moving on, I at last came to a dim sort of light not far from the docks and heard a forlorn creaking in the air. And looking up, saw a swinging sign over the door with a white painting upon it, faintly repressing a tall, straight jet of misty spray, and these words underneath: the Spouter Inn, Peter Coffin. Coffin? Spouter? Rather ominous in that particular connection, thought I. But it is a common name in Nantucket, they say. And I suppose this Peter here is an immigrant from there, as the light looked so dim and the place for the time looked quiet enough. And the dilapidated little wooden house itself looked as if it might have been carted here from the ruins of some burnt district. And as the swinging sign had a poverty-stricken sort of creak to it, I thought that here was the very spot for cheap lodgings and the best of pot coffee. I'll have you know, this book is slightly racist. They just mentioned that he walked into a black church, and it seems like he was very uncomfortable. This book talks a lot about race, but he actually changes as the book goes on. When he meets this guy from an island that's really a savage, because like he'd eat people back on his own island. But they become like best friends. So it was really a book that was challenging those norms, and church going and stuff like that. Which is really different. But just to say that, because I did say the the naughty southern word a little bit ago, and I don't want to kind of leave it hanging there. But this was written in the 1800s, so that's really, it wasn't really a bad word then. But yeah, it's a really fascinating book. It's about, like, they go off into the sea, and then they're looking for this whale called Moby Dick. I can read more of it. Where am I at, actually? Almost to chapter 3. Bruh. Do you want me to read the rest of chapter 2 today? Yes! Okay, let's read to the rest of the chapter 2, and then we'll be done for this evening. And then you can go to bed. And then I can go to bed. No, actually I have to edit this together, and then I can go to bed. Okay, where are we at? Peter Coffin. Okay, it was a queer sort of place. A gable-ended old house. Gable-ended is like a... two things go down. Or something. No, it might be a little bit different from that, but it's not. It's just a type of roof. You can look it up if you really want to know. One side palsied, as it were. One side was like leaning. I don't know. And leaning over sadly. It stood on a sharp, bleak corner, where that tempestuous wind, Euroclidian is a reference to the Bible. I guess the Apostle Paul was in a gale once, and so he's making an allusion to the wind, that just being a huge wind, kept up a worse howling than it ever did about poor Paul's tossed craft. Euroclidian, nevertheless, is a mighty pleasant zephyr to anyone indoors, with his feet on the hob, quietly toasting for bed. In judging of that tempestuous wind called Euroclidian, says the old writer, of whose works I possess the only copy extant, it maketh a marvellous difference, whether thou lookest at it from a glass window, where the frost is all on the outside, or whether thou observest it from the sashless window, where the frost is on both sides, and of which the white death, the W-I-G-H-T death, is the only glazier. I don't know what he's quoting from. True enough, thought I, as this passage occurred to my mind. Old black letter, thou reasonest well. Yes, these eyes were windows. Yes, these eyes are windows. In this body of mine is the house. What a pity they didn't stop up the old chinks and the crannies though, and thrust in a little lint here and there. But it's too late to make any improvements now. The universe is finished. The copestone is on, and the chips were carted off 1,000,000 years ago. Poor Lazarus there, chattering his teeth against the curbstone for his pillow, and shaking off his tatters with his shiverings. He might plug up both ears with rags. And put a corncob into his mouth, and yet that would not keep out the tempestuous Euroclidian. He's just saying the wind was very, very, very strong. And like even Lazarus, who was dead in the grave, would not wake up from the noise. Or no. Like even being dead, he couldn't like keep out the noise of it. I don't know. It basically I don't know. Euroclidian, says old Deeves. I forget what Deeves is. In his red silken wrapper, he had a redder one afterwards. Pooh. What a fine frosty night. How Orion glitters. What northern lights. Let them talk of their oriental summer climes of everlasting conservatories give me the privilege of making my own summer with my own coals. But what thinks Lazarus? Can he warm his bluish hands by holding them up to the grand northern lights? That's probably a no. Would not Lazarus rather be in Sumatra than here? There's a lot of mosquitoes tonight. Oh my goodness. There's a pond too, so that really does not help. Would he not far rather lay him down lengthwise along the line of the equator? Yea, ye gods, go down to the fiery pit itself in order to keep out of this frost. He's very cold. Now that Lazarus should lie stranded there on the curbstone before the door of Dives. This is more wonderful than an iceberg should be moored to one of the Moluccas. Yet Dives himself, he too lives like a czar in an ice palace made of frozen sighs, and being a president of a temperance society, he only drinks the tepid tears of orphans. I wish I knew who Dives was. That would make this a lot more understandable. But no more of this blubbering now. We are going a whaling, and there's plenty of that yet to come. Let us feet and see what sort of place this spouter may be. So let's recap what we've heard so far. Chapter 1 was about Ishmael, and he said basically, like, I like to go whaling because water's really nice, and I like to do a noble old thing, and it makes me feel good. Chapter 2 is about, oh, I guess I can't go. I can't go now to Nantucket, which is where I'm gonna head off for whaling. But I'm gonna go to New Bedford, and I guess I gotta stay the night. And he's just looking for a place to stay, and he finds the Spouter Inn. That's the entirety of Chapter 1 and 2 summarized in about 1 minute. And if you watch both videos, it took you about, like, what, 30 to 40 minutes to read that? Yep. So it's a really good book. If I don't do another one, you gotta read the rest of it, because it's really interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. Remember to share it, and the last one, and the next one, if this is a thing. Have a nice day, and I wish you the best. Yeah, okay.